Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stone by Stone. I'm still your host, Andrew Swanson, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 2. I'm very, very fortunate to be joined here by an old friend, Tom Roe, who joins us as the Director of Coaching for Northwind Soccer Club, which is right here in the neighborhood with us on the far north side. Tom, thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So here on Stone by Stone, we tend to do a thing where we like to get to know people a lot better. Our first episode was with a guy named Caden McGreevy, who designed these posters and also happened to be at our first ever tryout as a player. Played in our first ever game. We lost 12-0. He's not on the team anymore. Hell of an artist, though. But I know him very well, so I didn't need to ask all these early questions. But if it's okay with you, I kind of start early.
Go ahead.
Great. First question, where do you grow up and how would you describe the environment and culture around sports, if any, in your community?
So I grew up in a small seaside town in the north of England called Scarborough. We had a professional soccer team there that unfortunately got relegated when I was younger into the non-league, the kind of conferences of English football. Still remember the name of the goalkeeper from Carlisle that scored the goals, Jimmy Glass. I'll remember that name till the day I die because it ended up kind of ruining professional soccer within our community. Scarborough unfortunately never got back to the English leagues. And ended up folding. They've now got a new non-league team called Scarborough Athletic. And just from memory standpoints, like when we were youth players, whenever we play in our local leagues and local cup competitions, all of our finals would be played at their stadium. It was called the McCain Stadium, known as the Theatre of Chips. Play on Old Trafford, the Manchester United Stadium.
Theatre of
Dreams.
That's
and we, when they were in the professional ranks, we had some big games. They played against, I believe it was Chelsea in an FA Cup game. Unfortunately, lost that. I know that we had some players from Scarborough that ended up going on and playing for big clubs. John O'Greening ended up going to Manchester United. Actually won a Champions League medal when we did the treble, and that led Manchester United to come and play in a friendly game down at the stadium and everything else. And there was sport within Scarborough. It was big. Just a little bit of a different culture though compared to what we see in America. There was a big kind of Sunday league culture. A lot of what we call pub teams, and high-level pub teams.
Yeah.
So, a lot of big games, trying to remember some of the names, but Pickering Town were a big one. Edge Hill was another one. And then there was other big pubs. I remember, obviously, there was pubs that I played for, Newlands, the Duchess, that type of thing. Some of them had multiple teams. And also it was a bit more of that culture rather than kind of what you see over here, which is a little bit more on the geared towards the professionals at the adult level.
So are pub leagues and pub teams, as we call them here, over there, that's sort of what we consider the elite amateur level, sort of, right? In that it's Sunday league, but it's also so some guys are making a little money. It's high level.
Some of that, yeah, and it's the money side of it doesn't really come in as much.
Sure.
It's a lot more played for, I don't want to say it's played from the love of the sport because I think it's still played from the love of the sport here as well.
Yeah.
But everybody does.
Yeah.
The level was really high. You got some really good players that were coming from some of those ex-pro teams and some of those non-league teams that we're playing in. I was never good enough to be in any of those, but there was still some real high-level soccer played in Scarborough.
Awesome. What were you sort of most into outside of soccer as a kid? Growing up in Scarborough, what was your... I'm sure it was a pretty big part of it, but,
Yeah, it was all really sport-related.
Yeah.
It was... If I wasn't playing soccer, it was you were playing cricket, you were playing tennis. So it was all a lot. It was all sport related and competition based.
Yeah. And you grew up in Scarborough. Where in the country is that?
So that is in the northeast. So a little bit east of like York, a little bit south of Newcastle. So we're big seaside town.
Yeah.
And the whole Scarborough Fair, Simon and Garfunkel.
Yes, of course. I was going to ask, obviously.
So yeah.
Awesome. And how did you first sort of become a Man United fan?
Just through my dad. It was very early on. Like my first memories of really being a Man United fan were it was the 94-95 season.
Yeah.
We lost the league to Blackburn on the last day when we played West Ham and tied. They lost to Liverpool, and even though Liverpool are our biggest rivals, it was they beat Blackburn, and they should have done it. They did everything that they needed to do for us to win the league, and we just couldn't get over that hurdle. And then basically the following week, we played Everton in an FA Cup final, and we lost that game 1-0 against Everton. Paul Rideout scoring the winning goal there. So that's like my first kind of real memory of being a Man United fan. Parents got me all the jerseys and everything else. But that's my first big memory of being a Man United.
So you got to be a fan during the, like you mentioned, the treble winning season and the class of 92 and all those things. What's your sort of like favorite memory watching Man United play? Like I'm sure there was a lot of good times during that period, but like, you know, what was your sort of like favorite, most beloved, like, you know, moment you can think back to?
There's a couple. I think both times that we won the Champions League. The first time was in 1999, so I was 11 years old at the time. And I remember we're 1-0 down, and it gets to about the 90th minute, and it's myself, my dad, and one of his friends, and his friend's kind of thrown in the towel. He's gone into the kitchen to make a cup of tea.
Yeah.
All annoyed, and all of a sudden, like, we score the equaliser.
Yeah.
It's like, we're super happy, everything else. A minute later, we score the winner. I remember kind of the coffee table in the living room getting tipped over. By this point, my mum had actually got back to the house because she was expecting everybody to be really upset because they'd obviously...
Yeah.
She'd been watching it with my dad's so that she was watching it down the road with my dad's friend's wife. She decided, no, they're going to be upset.
Yeah.
Come back and make sure everything's okay. And yeah, there's that one. And then just 2008, we played Chelsea again in a final. And I just remember being in Manchester at the time because I was at university in Bolton, which was just a town over. We're in Manchester, and a little bit different. A few beverages were drank that night.
Of course.
I just remember being hit over the head with a bucket that was used for beers as people were lifting it up.
Oh, no.
The Champions League final, the Champions League trophy, sorry. So, and again, that night, it was just, the city of Manchester was just boom.
Yeah.
It was so good. So I think both of those, from a Man United standpoint, kind of some of my fondest.
Yeah, that's good ones. I mean, like that. Those are, as a person who, as you know, like got into soccer a little later, I sort of found it just through my interest, right? But that's like one of the, as a kid who, you know, grew up in that period of time in the 90s, like I remember those teams, even though I was not a part of soccer. And that sort of shows you how big they were, is that like I knew who Beckham was, and I knew who even some of those other dudes who were not as famous as he is, I knew their faces when I came back to it, because that was just such an incredible feat. Is there anything that you feel like you would maybe have gotten into if you weren't a soccer coach or like involved in soccer club?
I mean, my background is in psychology, so I
Okay.
Have gone into kind of like counseling or something like that.
Yeah.
But everything I ever did from like a young age was all geared towards sports.
Yeah.
If it wasn't soccer related, I think it would have been some other sport that I would have got into.
I'm sure I know the answer to this, but like, do you feel as though you're, the time that you've spent being interested or at least learning about psychology has helped you be a better coach?
100%. I think
Yeah.
when you look at just from a coach education standpoint, the different pillars that they talk about, you've obviously got the physical, you've got the tactical, technical, and then you've got the psychosocial. And I think the psychosocial side of things is something that could really be developed a little bit further. And I think that kind of sometimes gives you a little bit of a head start against other people that maybe don't have a similar background in that side of things. Just because I think it helps you be able to set the expectations. It helps you to learn how to build relationships. It helps you with kind of just some of the, not like mind tricks, but like, okay, I've got kids that are misbehaving. How can I quickly get their focus back without being this ultra authoritarian kind of like drill sergeant?
Right.
I think little things like that are huge.
Yeah, that's me. I'm sort of continuing on the youth soccer side. When you were young and you were a player, did you experience things that you sort of kept as lessons for you now? Does that make sense? Like experiences you had as players that have impacted you similarly to be a better coach?
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, there was, I do think that the level of coaching at like the youth level now, especially from what I've seen in the States, is so much better than what we received growing up. We had a lot of people that had a lot of knowledge about the game, but maybe didn't know how to work with kids, didn't know kind of how to teach the game. I think there's a big difference between being a really good player and being a really good coach. And again, like even just the way that the structure of the game is now is completely different. We were playing 11v11 all the way from like 7 and 8 years old.
Yeah.
We were touching but like we played on, as I mentioned about playing at like the pro club stadium, we played the entire field 11v11 as 9-year-old kids.
That's wild.
That just would never happen.
Yeah.
Where we're playing 4v4, 5v5, 7v7, 9v9. We're really bringing kind of like the game to a level that I think is good for the development of players where they're at right now.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Is there one thing that you can remember from being a player that you maybe do now or isn't a thing yet, but like you wish you had as a player that maybe you do as a coach or your club is sort of trying to do that you didn't get as a player?
I think focusing on the technical side.
Yeah.
Growing up, it was very physical. Games were very physical. The bigger, stronger players were the ones that kind of were focused on through no fault of their own. But then the technical side didn't really get developed. And then decision making wasn't really a big part of that as well. So I think what we focus on now is, the physical players are like the more physically advanced players now might look better at like, let's say 7 or 8 years old, but as everybody else kind of like grows into the body, that physically might change. So what we try to do is we try to make sure that we're developing the technical skills of all the players. One of the things that we talk about is creating decision makers. So allowing them to understand in this situation, these are the options that are available to you. Are you going to pass? Are you going to dribble? Are you going to shoot? Which part of your foot are you going to use? Which techniques are you going to use? And then hopefully when they do go through those growth spurts or people start catching on to them a little bit more physically, they're able to go back and rely on those technical skills and those decisions that have been implemented at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that's sort of a global wide thing or a specific thing that has changed recently? Is the focus on a more technical side of youth soccer, or is that a specific thing in the U.S., do you think, that you've noticed? Because, I mean, obviously there's youth soccer clubs all over the world that do things.
Yeah, I think obviously everybody kind of saw the Barcelona team of like the late 2000s and 2010s, and I think everything started gearing towards a little bit more of that technical side. And while I can't speak for every club or every country, I do think that it's become more prevalent. I mean, the skills that we see kids exhibiting now are not things that we ever saw or even did when we were kids.
Yeah.
And it goes to show in the pro game as well. I think, like you see now, all these players are doing these ridiculous things with the ball. The tactical and technical side of the game is probably so much more advanced now than it was back in those days. And I think that that's just going to help continue the growth of the sport because, again, like I mentioned, with the physical side of things, you're allowing players to do things that maybe don't have the physical tools, but they're able to still work on all those things.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Do you find that kids, because you've probably, experienced all kinds of different kids, do you find that kids are excited to learn the sort of like dribbly technique stuff, or are they more excited to just play the game? Or is it kind of a mixture now where like there is a seriousness to some youth players now that want to do this for a long time, want to improve? So does that stuff like interest kids, or are they more just trying to play,
Listen, I think the big thing is when you talk about like the game of soccer, everybody just wants to play.
Yeah.
The only thing that I could like kind of relate it to is like you've got somebody that plays baseball. They're not just going to want to pitch like a strike zone and that be it. Like they want that competition level.
Right.
So I do think that like the actual playing side is still what kids enjoy the most. But then I do think when it comes to those technical skills and those kind of like those dribbling mechanics that we just talked about, I think a lot of youth players are looking up to their kind of like role models, and a lot of the bigger role models now are going to be those players that are like looking to take players on, the Mbappes, the Mo Salahs of the world. Like those are the players that people are looking at and the kids are looking at and being like, I want to be that type of player. So
yeah,
I think naturally they gravitate towards wanting to do those things.
Right. There's not a lot of kids anymore that are just looking up old Paul Scholes passing videos, Wouldn't that be amazing? Last week I was wearing an Archie Gemmill sweatshirt that I made myself. And no one knows, similar vibe to the level of attention that Archie Gemmill and Paul Scholes get is just criminal. Okay, so we're going to sort of move a little bit. We've been talking about this a lot already, but thinking about kind of America's unique relationship to soccer. Very different from anyone else. Before we move on, I hope you're enjoying the actors we hired on the other side of this wall. We're just trying to keep you on your toes. So this first question is, in your opinion, what is the single biggest strength of the current American youth soccer system?
I'd say it's the availability that is out there now to kids to be able to see and watch the game is like no other. Growing up, we would have the soccer games that would be on Sunday that we'd be able to watch, and then a little bit later on there was a 12:30 game that you could watch on a Saturday. And obviously, TV has kind of increased that. But in the United States, everything's available. Whether you're wanting to watch the Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga, the MLS, the NWSL, there's all these different avenues for them to be able to watch. And then even things like YouTube, Instagram, being able to go in there and kind of watch that. I think technology has has played a huge part in that side of things. And then the other side of it is just like the technology that players have available to them through, whether it be things like Toka, whether it be like the camera systems like VO, Huddle, Trace, being able to go back and watch their own games, all that type of stuff. And that's a huge thing for youth players to be able to utilize. It'd just be a question of whether they're utilizing it in the right way.
Sure. And I imagine that is a challenge, right? Because there is so much content now out there to take in, and as you could say this about a lot of parts of society, it's like, how much is too much? Like, kids can just watch endless videos, highlight reels, and want to be that like superstar player, right? And it's hard to say how much better it is to spend that time watching Mbappe do things, or watching yourself play, or just kicking a ball against the wall, right? Like, what's going to be sort of the most beneficial for each kid is interesting. What is the most critical area where American youth soccer consistently falls short in developing talent in your mind?
I don't.
Pretty broad question.
Yeah, I don't know if it's where they fall short, but I think it's where the largest improvement needs to continue to be made, and that's the education. I think it's not just the education of the players. I think it's education of coaches, education of parents, and just education within like the entire system. So again, we need coaches to be educated because the game is continuously growing. And if we don't have that foundation of having enough coaches that are competent in developing players, like the players aren't going to be developed to the level that they could potentially reach.
Yeah.
If the parents aren't being educated, they're not going to know what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult because there is so many different things out there for players to go join, different clubs, different leagues. You've got like a 3v3 league here, you've got a 5v5 league there, you've got clubs that are ultra competitive, you've got other recreational programs, and it's what is the program that is right for your kid, and not only what's right for your kid, but sometimes what's right for your family. What is it that, like, are you willing to go travel to different states to play? Are you wanting to keep everything local? And again, I think that education piece is something that is, if they get better at just educating, I think that's going to have a trickle-down effect, and I think it's just going to continue to develop the game even there.
Totally. Do you think that the current focus on hyper-competitive select soccer, like you're describing with like ultra travel and stuff like that, is ultimately beneficial to the long-term enjoyment and development of the average player? Or do you think that focus potentially kind of does as much, if not more, cause more problems for certain kids if that's not the right environment for them?
Again, I think going back to what I mentioned about like the education, I think figuring out what is best for your kid.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about competition, I think sometimes it's used as a bit of a dirty word, and we don't want high levels of competition because it might kill the joy in certain players. Like certain players, that high competitiveness is really what they're looking for.
Right.
So while I think it's good for some players, I don't think it's necessarily going to be good for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back to, can we educate these players and parents on, hey, this is what to expect from this particular program. Mm-hmm. If that's not for you, that's okay. Go find the program that is right for you.
Yeah.
But again, as clubs within the US, one of the biggest things I think that we need to do is we need to make sure that we share those expectations with the community so that they know exactly what it is that they're going to get into when they join.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that amount of communication and kind of transparency is sort of on, you as a director in a club. It's up to you to share that with parents, communicate that. And it's also sort of probably in some ways for parents, also up to them to like show up and want to know, right? Because I'm sure that's not every parent that's going to be like, okay, tell me everything, right? I'm sure that takes a certain amount of effort more for some than others. Okay, this is a big one. If you could implement one change overnight to improve the quality of coaching certifications or player development standards nationwide, what would it be? And you can pick one of those avenues if you want, either like coaching education or certification or player development.
I'd say more opportunities for coach education. I'm going through the coach education pathway. I'm on the pathway to become a coach educator myself.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest problems that I see is you'll go through your certification, and we might go through the same certification, but we have totally different experiences. I maybe take a lot out of it. Other people might just be doing it just to get the certification so that they can go and coach or whatever, and they don't really take a lot of what they've learned and then continue to implement. I think being able to kind of have almost like redos in the sense of like, let's say you've passed a course, that's great, but like every couple of years, every year, can you go through like another continuous education piece that isn't overly expensive, doesn't take up a great deal of time and everything else, but is going to help improve you as a coach. Because again, I think if we're able to increase that level of education and the coaches, that's going to be passed on to the players, it's going to be passed on to the parents. And then it's just like teachers, right? The better teachers we get, the better students we're hopefully going to have, the better coaches we get, the better players we're hopefully going to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. And I think that like with a lot of things, it feels like the efforts and energy and everything put into education is amazing, but the efforts and energy put into retention of that information is not always that. It's like, well, it's up to you to do with it what you will, but like it's your system, so you tell me what to do with it. Maybe I should come back and tell you what I remember, right? I think that's a really, really...
Well, it's on the coaches as well to like want to be better. I mean, I work at a club where I believe that we have a really good staff, and I've actually had one of our coaches that she's relatively new to coaching, and she has seeked out opportunities and she wants to be better. And so I think a lot of that does come down to the coaches as well and their mentality, because again, you can kind of lead a horse to water, but they're not willing to drink it. It's on.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to, after a short break, we're going to get more into Northwind Soccer Club specifically and a little bit about the history and stuff there. But this has been awesome so far. Thank you so much for being with us, Tom. And we will be right back, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stone by Stone Season 2, Episode 2 with our prestigious guest, Tom Roe. Welcome back, Tom. So we are going to move into your career as of late, recently with Northwind Soccer Club. So this is a club I know a lot about as a person who lives in this part of Chicago, because y'all are all over the place, at every field, everywhere. So to give us a little background on the club itself, what is the core sort of philosophy of the club, or the thing that you saw missing in the market that made you want to start this club?
So I didn't actually start the club. The club was, I moved to Chicago in 2016, at the beginning of 2016, and was just looking for a club to kind of coach at. I was moving from Iowa from a club that I was running there, and basically just ended up falling upon Northwind. And then just based on the philosophies that they kind of had in the time, was a place where I think that I definitely fit in. Their philosophy of kind of like everybody plays, I think is a huge part of what I believe in when it comes to youth soccer. Again, I think when you talk about like those hyper competitive programs. I think that there's definitely a place for that, but then there also needs to be a place for people that want to play, want to get better. Now, I'd say what kind of differentiates us from kind of just a recreational program is that our focus is on that kind of development of those players. One of the analogies that I kind of use with a lot of parents that we speak to is not everybody picks up a guitar wanting to be a rock star or be a Rolling Stone, but everybody wants to learn how to play a song.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the same. That's what we kind of look at within our program is we're not expecting our players to become professional players, but we do want to make sure that they end up leaving our program with a love of the game and developing and becoming better players from when they join.
Yeah, absolutely. I have definitely known that there's a lot of different kinds of clubs that have a lot of different sort of vibes and attitudes about them. And, we started Edgewater Castle's adult program with a pretty similar mindset that there's like a lot of different kinds of players out here, a lot of different kinds of backgrounds and energies that are going into the game. And there's not a place for all of them to be, right? And it does feel as though, especially with, the connection to AYSO and those kinds of things, there's just so much accessibility to the club that I really appreciate in this area, which is kind of dominated by a lot of other like slightly less accessible seeming clubs that have a little bit more of like a win or die mentality a lot of the time. What is the most important trait you look for in hiring a coach?
I think just the character and being able to build a rapport with kids. Again, I think if you can have a wealth of soccer knowledge, but if you're not able to kind of provide the right environment for players to be able to learn, I think that that's something that is going to affect the development of the players. So I think just looking for people that are going to be good with kids, have that good character. Some of the best coaches that we've got at the club didn't have the most extensive soccer background, but they've been fantastic with the players, and we've been able to kind of teach them some of the soccer related things. And we've seen great development not just in the players but in those individual coaches themselves.
How do you balance the need to win games at the competitive levels with the club's broader mission, like you're describing, of like character building and player development? How do you manage and navigate that with both the players themselves or parents' expectations and things like that?
Yeah, it's so hard because again, when we talk about like that education piece of what it is that we're about, what it is that youth sports needs to be about, I've never had a college coach ask me what a score was at U8. But at the same time, like coaches and egos kind of play into things. Again, part of the reason why we get into sport is that competitive edge. So everybody wants to win, and believe it or not, even the kids want. And but I think one of the things that you've got to do is you kind of got to set those expectations early. Exactly what type of program that you are, and then it's going to be a kind of the base of your club is, all right, we are looking to develop these players. Every player gets the opportunity to play. We have a thing where it's every player we try and give them half of every single game. Now, some players are maybe going to play a little bit more than others in one particular game. In other games, it might not be the same. So I think that that's a real difficult one. And I don't think that there's any right or wrong answer to it, where other clubs might be just focused on the winning side and kids might not play. I think that that's their prerogative, and I don't think they should be told to do anything different.
Sure.
But again, I think you've just got to be honest as a club of like, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to do it. And it comes down to that education piece of the clubs educating the parents on what it is that they're trying to do.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. What is the biggest or most unexpected hurdle you've had to overcome since joining Northwind? and as the club has grown?
I'd say, honestly, probably the growth of the sport, and then COVID was a big challenge.
Yeah, the polar opposite.
We managed to keep the club kind of going and provided some like online services for our players. So that was a little bit different and a little bit challenging. But then I'd say kind of just the growth side of it, because as you grow, and when I first joined the club, we were like close to 200 players. And now we're anywhere between 400 and 500 players. So I think when that growth happens, it's you're constantly trying to bring in more coaches. You've got to make sure that you're overseeing them. Then there's the challenge of, as you're well aware in the city, like the facilities, and trying to still provide that same level of quality that you were able to have previously. And again, it's so I'd say like the growth is probably the biggest challenge. It's a good challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true of a lot of things, but it does feel like that in sports too, and that like the scaling of things is the goal, right? But as it's happening, there is that sort of like, okay, I hope everything's staying on as we get higher up here. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Where do you envision Northwind Soccer Club being in the next 5 years, both in terms of size and impact? Or do you sort of imagine it, sustaining its current state for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at sports participation numbers, they have started to drop kind of over the last couple of years.
Generally, you mean?
Generally.
Yeah.
So I think being able to sustain what we currently have and hopefully potentially grow a little bit. I think one of the things that we are really focused on is continuing that development of the players. So hopefully people see us as a program that is developing those players. Whether those players move on is a completely different question. But giving them that experience and that development at those younger ages is where we have a lot of our focus, and we want to see a lot of growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So we're going to move on a little bit to just Chicago as a city. So you lived here in Chicago for how long?
I will be going into my 10th.
Okay, awesome. Do you feel like a Chicagoan now that you've been here for 10 years? Not quite. No? Okay, fair enough. It took me roughly, I think, 15 to feel like a Chicagoan myself, which I still barely do. But what do you think makes the Chicago soccer scene unique compared to other major metropolitan areas in the U.S.? And I know it's sort of, I don't know a ton about other parts of the U.S.'s like soccer cultures, but I guess compared to, maybe some that you've seen overseas. Or
Yes, I'd say just within kind of the Chicagoland and Illinois itself, I think there is a huge amount of players, which I think is great, which means that there's a lot of competition. I think there's a lot of localized competition that's really good. Again, I've traveled around the country to different places, and some of the other states, even with like not necessarily the bigger cities, but some of the smaller cities, the level of competition around them isn't as big, so they do need to travel a little bit further afield to be able to get the right level of competition for their players.
Right.
I don't think that's necessarily needed here in Chicago. And then I'd say like the other thing is just the climate. Like soccer is a kind of a year-round sport.
Yeah.
But in Chicago itself, like the climate it changes all the time. We've had a really great fall, but we've had other falls in the past where it's just been a complete wash.
Yeah.
We have some winters where we're able to stay outside in November, December, January because we're still getting those 40, 50 degree days.
Yep.
But then there's those other times where it's like negative 20.
Yeah.
I think you go down to like the Texas, the Arizonas, the Californias, the Floridas, and obviously they've got completely different climates. They've got their own issues with like the heat during the summer and everything else. But I just think with the climate that we have in Chicago, it has a massive effect on not just player development, but also if you look at things like fields and that type of thing, like how many grass fields are we able to have in the city, that type of stuff.
Yes.
The climate's just going to ruin them.
Yeah, totally. And I think, that's one thing that I think will always be an issue is just density and lack of indoor space, Like once we hit, we can't be outside anymore weather, it's gold. Square footage just turns to gold at those turf fields. Yeah. Okay, so in your experience, what role do you think sort of local education systems and park district systems like that, like those kinds of programs, how do they serve or not serve club soccer and sort of soccer as a whole? Like, what is your sort of take on the school sports aspect of soccer in the U.S.?
I think that's a difficult one because you've got some programs that do a great job. You've got other programs that really struggle just to kind of get the participation in a sport at the level that is sometimes needed. But I think one of the biggest aspects is it provides a social experience for those players. So if you've got a bunch of friends that are interested in soccer, that's maybe going to push you into soccer as well. So I think through those younger ages, and we've started seeing an increase in kind of like middle school soccer and everything else, I think that can kind of guide players into playing a competitive soccer a little bit more. At the high school level, again, I think there's still that massive social element that I think players love. And that can sometimes guide players into like the club level. But I do think like if there was an increased collaboration between the clubs and the schools, I think that the overall environment would be even better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, so often it feels like there's also a bit of disparity between facilities and clubs, right? Where like schools, the public schools, the park district, these are sort of the entities that have a lot of the facilities that are, quote unquote public, right? And it's hard because I think not, like you're saying, there isn't a lot of collaboration there or working togetherness there as of yet. So I think it's difficult for all of the facilities to kind of be best utilized when the people that need them aren't really communicating with each other.
Yeah, I think there's that. And then I think the education standpoint as well. I think that a lot of the schools have parent volunteer coaches and they give up so much of their time. And I think that's great. I think it just can the clubs help those people with the education side? Hey, this is a great way of like developing your practices. This is a great way of kind of like continuing to develop the players. I think that'd be a great way of being able to collaborate with kind of like the school system within Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. Having like even just like volunteer parent coaching education, like what are they called? Just sort of like a
seminar.
Yeah, like a presentation where you can like get a bunch of different coaches in to do a specific topic or whatever. That's a great idea. We should do that. What is one piece of advice you would give to a young person who sort of wants to get into a career in soccer or wants to get into coaching or wants to sort of start pursuing it in a way that is not specific to, being a player, I guess?
Find something that you love doing within the sport. And gain as much experience as you possibly can through it, whether it's coaching, whether it's things like sports podcasts, that type of thing, and then just be consistent. I think that's the biggest thing. Is I know for myself when I got into coaching, it was I jumped straight in. It was 4 nights a week. I was sometimes coaching teams that I didn't necessarily want to be coaching, or I was doing things I didn't necessarily want to be doing, working with a more experienced coach, kind of just setting up goals and putting down goals and all that type of stuff. So I think that that's an element of it. And then, like I said about the consistency, I think it's once you start doing something, you've just got to stick to it because, there's going to be times where it gets frustrating and you don't feel like you're going the place where you want to go. But just keep going, and it's going to, you'll hopefully end up where you need to be.
Yeah, it's a great answer. As someone who's, very much a mentor to a lot of your players and a lot of your coaching staff, I'm sure, who's someone from your past that you think back to as like a big mentor of yours as a coach or in the game or just in life in general?
Yeah, I've got a few. One of my big mentors was, he was actually my tutor during my undergrad, Paul Russell. He was very just brutally honest with me about everything.
Yeah.
Again, being a young kid that wanted to get into sport, he was very honest with me about how serious I was taking things, and he's like, despite whatever talent you may think you have, unless you're willing to put in the work, it's not gonna pay off. And I think that was a bit of an eye opener for me, and somebody that I still reach out today, just for advice and everything else. So like I'd say him, and then I'd say a lot of the coach educators that I've had recently. Adam Howarth, who is the Illinois Youth Soccer Association's DLC. I lean on him for quite a few things, just from a club standpoint and a coach standpoint. And then one of my other coach educators, Mara McCrae, she was just really good at kind of like helping me develop as a coach and understanding where I needed to improve, but also areas where she thought I was excelling at, and kind of helping me focus on some of those areas of weakness and where I could bridge that gap.
Awesome. So next year, there's going to be a World Cup, as we know, coming to the United States. No games in Chicago. Thanks, Rom. So what are you, A, most excited about, and B, kind of most like, how do you think it's going to go? What are your thoughts?
I think it's going to be a very different experience to what you kind of see in different countries. I think because it's so spread out throughout the States, I don't think that you're going to get the kind of the carnival atmosphere that you'll be getting some of the other countries. So I think there's going to be that element to it. I think the difference in times from what we're watching in America compared to what people are looking for in other countries is going to have a big factor on how the games are played. Because again, we saw with the Club World Cup this past year, how is the weather going to affect the game? How is like the heat going to affect the players?
Speaking of those 110 degree
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it's, hopefully it goes well. I think you're going to get a lot of buy-in from America. We hope that the US goes far, because I think the further the US goes, I think the more interest is going to be in the World Cup. And then just from a personal standpoint, I hope England obviously go win it all. But we'll obviously...
Congrats on the recent qualification. I saw that, Who's
no doubt we'll have some heartbreak when we're over here, so...
Just hope it doesn't go to penalties, Although that went well recently, didn't it? You just won penalties recently. Who's your all-time, favorite England player?
Well, England player, there'd probably be two. You mentioned Paul Scholes earlier. Growing up, he was one of my favorites.
So,
but one of my... You mentioned earlier about one of my earliest memories of watching Man United. One of my earliest memories of England was watching them during Euro 96. And Paul Gascoigne was just...
Had a feeling you were going to say that.
Different type of player. I never, he wasn't anybody that I ever thought I could be like a lot of people. You see those role models, and it's like, he just did stuff with the ball and just played in a way that was insane. Yeah.
That's a fantastic answer. He's a player that I've heard about as this almost cult hero kind of guy in a way. And it sort of feels like a little similar to the George Best story in some ways, right? And this like outlandish talent and just like a firecracker of a soul and a body, like just impossible to maintain. Yeah. That's a fantastic answer. I like Paul Scholes a lot because when my friends in middle school who were into soccer, and I'd like, be goofing around playing whatever games they were at halftime, they said I could beat Paul Scholes because I was a little ginger. So that's all the time we've got for today, man. Thank you so much, Tom, for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, speaking with you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for enjoying another episode of Stone by Stone with us. We will see you next time. Have a great rest of your day.